Hello.
Hello.
Well, Matt, if they have found us here in this dimly lit internet corner, then I think they might like two things. They might like Age of Sigmar, and they might like Striking Last. What do you think?
Most likely. I don't think anybody likes striking last as much as we do, but you're welcome to come in to our little corner of the world and and listen and
Exactly.
exchange of ideas.
Sometimes good ideas,
Mhm.
sometimes just ideas, but you can always listen. That will be on the offer all night, or at least for the duration of this particular episode. And tonight you have a duopoly. You got myself, Jack, and Matt holding down the fort with some of our other hosts who are off in the hinterlands doing a few different things. But we got a pretty spicy topic for you because we are joined by our spiritual third, the dark bull god of the Hashutian Helsmiths of Hashut.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hashut. We're going to dive into this. We're going to talk about this, see what this faction's all about. Kind of see if we can give everyone out here some perspective on how to get a little traction with them, or at least have some fun with them out there.
Yeah, so I want to pick your brain on these guys. Um, the Jack has had, I believe, is it 2 games so far with them?
Yep, two entire games.
But in
Two.
pure dad hammer, you have already gone through all the combinations that seem the most interesting to you and tried to unlock as much as you can to
Oh,
get the
absolutely.
pure filtered essence.
Indeed. And I would say I'm committed to the path of the Hellsmith right now. And I definitely was calling them back in January about them sort of maybe being the hoped for end of the preview lake cycle or hint cycle. They
Mm-hmm.
were there. I bought all this stuff. I have like way too many models in my basement right now, which I'm in the process of putting together and doing test schemes on. But they have the full army I'm playing around with on TTS and such like that. And I've gotten two entire games in with them, and definitely by the skin of my teeth and the turn of the die, but got a sense of how they worked with a few little victories. So I will give some very unqualified but lightly experienced pontifications on what I think is going on here, and maybe how folks who are also interested in dominating with the Hellsmiths can find some success in the tabletop.
I love it. I love it. They're an army. We've had multiple episodes where I've been like, oh man, I just the sculpts compared to the old ones and blah blah
Hmm.
blah and waffling. And so what I'd like to know first is like you had your we've had a couple of talks about how the army plays theoretically, right? Can
Hmm.
you do like a quick debrief on how the army plays in practice?
Absolutely. So in practice, the army is a couple of things. One, it is a mixed arms force, and it's something you always got to kind of keep in mind because you have a lot of different things you can do in a lot of different phases. But you have to be very careful about how you spend your resources, which comes with having too many things to do at the times. So, I mean, just to talk about the units for a second, I mean, you have that variety. You have a priest,
Mm-hmm.
you have multiple wizards, you have good spell lore, you have good priest lore, nothing completely overwhelming. You're just going to spam one thing, but with good choices all around.
Mm-hmm.
You have artillery, you have some shooting units, you have some heavy hitting cavalry units, you have some sort of not too exciting, but they're good at sitting there infantry,
Yeah, you've
and
got like a solid depth of war scroll variety, right?
exactly. And that's sort of both in a weird way, I think, the strength and the weakness of the force, because you don't have a lot of overlapping synergies in terms of one type of thing you want to do outside of maybe shooting. And that means that sometimes you have a tool which is pretty good for specific jobs, but not perfect for all the jobs you might want to do with that kind of thing. And you don't have the depth of bench in that one area of the roster to make up for that. And I'll get into that a little bit more later, but that's one of the themes that we're going to kind of explore with the Hellsmiths. The
So,
second theme, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
quick question before you move on
Yeah.
from that. So, for players who are interested in them, miss the big box, and they're starting to like look at the army as like, oh, this is a possible pickup and go. What would you say is the closest other army out there that you could align to like the same play style? My guess would be cities, um, just because of the sort of even spread as well as slight speed,
Mhm.
slight staying power. You do have screens, you do have shooting, you have a cannon. You don't have anything that looks incredibly overwhelming, um, but a lot of solid players.
I think that's probably the best analog. I would be tempted to say Skaven a little bit because they do have all the same sort of varieties of things, but
Mm-hmm.
Skaven's too zany. It's
Yep.
too much depth of bench, and you just don't have quite that level of like roll high and pop off in Chaos Dwarves or Helsmiths of Hashut as you do there. It is very much methodical. You have all the tools. They're going to get there, but it's not going to be quick. You're gonna be telegraphing it a little bit.
Well, and
Uh,
there's the follow up then. Is it tricksy like Scape?
oh no, it is not that tricksy. I mean, I would say that the roster and the artifacts they have like one or two tricks which could definitely catch people out if they're not paying attention to them. But you don't have the ability with this army, generally, to just be oppressively everywhere, all over the map, with like tons of like movement tricks in the same way that people might be used to from something like Skaven or Sylvaneth or whatever, where they have to be
Mm.
really careful. You are rarely going to be able to be somewhere suddenly through a teleport without like a lot of special effort like on the spell or
Mm-hmm.
a very specific army renown trick and that's something which is going to have your opponents generally breathing a sigh of relief because they're going to know about how far you can get. They're going to understand your threat ranges and those threat ranges be very cleanly defined, which means a good player is going to have an easier time against you than they might otherwise, where you could potentially have omniboard, danger spots.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess to kind of get into that, I mean, the thing to remember is they're dwarfs, right? They're dwarven, right? They're 4 inch movement for the most part. And so you have pretty good ranges on some of the things you'll have access to, but it's that plus 4 inches. There's not a lot of run and shoot. There's again very limited teleports and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have your blunderbuss guys with their pretty good shots and they shoot 18 inches, and someone is standing 23 inches away, they are not worried about you for the most
Yep.
part.
So
And
yours.
that's,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead, Matt. I got more intact, but you go for it.
So you're essentially this army really telegraphs its strengths and then moves forward and enforces its will, essentially.
You have to. You have to. It's an army that, they say sometimes you lose a game with the deployment phase.
Mm-hmm.
If you aren't thinking about where you need to be in turns 1 and 2, you've lost the game because you don't have the ability generally to get where you need to in a turn of a die. For example, if you have a unit of infernal cohorts or basic infantry blocks of 3 guys, you 3 up save, kind of just one wound dudes, they move 4 inches. If you feel like you need to be in the midboard, you got to start that early because you don't have the option to like run and shoot and charge or teleport over there, because you
Mm-hmm.
drop like a dwarf hole or something like that, like with a mining drill. No, it's like, am I going to run there? Am I going to get there? Like, if their job is to sit here, fine. If their job is to go there, they got to get moving and they got to figure out, where they need to be at different times. And you just don't have a lot of leeway to make up for it because of that. So I guess
Gotcha.
so that's one thing we're going to explore with that, and it really comes up a lot because all the units have very specific ways they're good and specific ways they're kind of can fulfill a function, but they aren't necessarily flashy in other ways. The other thing kind of goes with that is there's a special resource mechanic in the Helsmiths of Hashut, which is really fun, but also kind of a little bit unfortunate. And it's this idea of demonic power because all the war scrolls have built in the sort of like bonuses where you can power them up to 3 demonic power points.
Mm-hmm.
And if they get to 3, they get some special bonus, they get stronger. And this has a kind of a double-edged sword effect where some of the war scrolls are really great if you get up to the 2 or 3 demonic power. Some of them are really kind of lackluster. They feel like a little bit like they're handicapped if you don't give them any demonic power. But this resource is super scarce. And kind of recap for people who haven't read the book or seen much of this, this is something you generate by sort of desolating stuff around the battlefield. Like you're desolating the objectives and the various like terrain features that you can contest. And you can just kind of pick one and each hero phase to do that with. It just gets marked as desolated. It can't be, messed with or removed or anything, even if you lose control of it later. It just sort of is somehow generating you demon points for the duration of the battle. But what this translates into is you get some demon points in your hero phase, equal to the number of things you have desolated. And that hero point can only be sort of increased in a couple, or demonic power point can be increased in a couple of different ways. One is by using a ability to summon one war scroll, where like the spear, cohort can on a 3-up generate one of these points for something nearby them. So unreliable, but can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And they give you sort of a pity mechanic where if you really want one or two extra, you can use a command point in the hero phase, generate one or two extra. But even that's a bit handicapped. It's two if you have under a certain number of demonic power points already. And it's one if you have more than that. So effectively, after the first turn, you can only get one this way. So you're never really going to have, unless you get really lucky or do some sort of crazy thing with the spear guys, more than 6 or 7 points, even in later turns in the game. So you have to think that your army can only ever like really juice up two things, or maybe one thing fully and two things kinda.
Okay.
And that means that your army is actually stronger at 1,000 points than it is at 2,000 points if you don't consider things like regiments of renown or whatever that might come into play, because you just can't put those points everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of hard to manipulate. You get them, you put them on stuff and power that up, and the only way to move that around within the turn is with the named hero character who can, in the enemy hero phase, kind of yoink them from one spot and then redistribute them around within a pretty generous 18-inch aura. But you have to start. Yeah, it's pretty good. But you got to start from the premise that you have this awesome resource, which is very limited. So the two things combined mean that you have like a lot of choice with this army, and it's really easy to make a slight misplay in that way.
So do you think it's a high skill cap army, or?
Oh, very much so. I think that this one is really easy to lose with because there's some dimensions to it. I mean, it's hard to pick exactly where to start, but I think maybe for people listening, they probably want to know a few things. Well, one, units and how they do and what they're good at and how you play with that. So we're going to get into that. Mm-hmm. But there's also the winning the game component. And even if it's a little bit drier, I want to just lead with that because I think it's so important.
Yeah, for sure.
In Sigmar right now, as we both know, Matt, you win by primary and by secondary. And those secondaries are cool 30 points that you could be getting typically of a max 80 in most missions. And it's pretty easy to be close on the primary no matter what, because you typically get like 5 points for having one and maybe up to 10 if you fill all the other objectives. Mm-hmm. Well, you have a literal uphill battle for your short little legs as a Helsmith of Hashut player, because you have movement, which while it can get you on objectives and help you establish board control, doesn't let you move around the board at the blink of an eye massively. Mm-hmm. You don't have a true horde that you can get some beefy units. And, even if you're fighting the primary, the secondaries are kind of hard for you as a faction because none of them are like a lock. You're not really perfectly situated to scouting because you can't like teleport and get around as easily. Mm-hmm. You can do intercept and recover, but if people hide things from you, that's a challenge. Getting stuff generally on the other side of the board and keeping it there is very unreliable. So that's a lot of later tactics in most missions. So most secondaries. So you have to really fight for your points. So I think that's something to keep in mind. And so without further ado, I think it brings us to the units. Mm-hmm. I mean, kind of like a couple big ones to talk about, but really you got your shooting units spread across a couple, shooting units and the cavalry, the war machines. You got like your sort of infantry, such as they are, fighting infantry. You got your hammers, quote unquote, your cavalry, and then you have some monster pieces, those sorted heroes. So without kind of go walking individually through each war scroll in too much depth, that's probably not what people want. They can go look at like the various, book reviews, look themselves. I'll hit some of the highlights. First, the good stuff. The shooting is quite good in this army. You do have a couple really awesome war machines. One of them comes stock. It's a bombard with 30-inch range. Another one comes with 24. And even if you don't juice them up with, PowerPoints, they can be pretty oppressive. They have a, once per ability in each, where if you're doing the bombard, kind of like the little like mortar thing, 30 inches, and it's like 4 shots, I think threes and threes, but it gets a native +1 to hit if you're targeting something over 12 inches away, which is 5 or more models. So most things you're going to be hitting on 2s and 3s. Ren 1 D3 damage, and it's anti-cavalry and anti-infantry. So against almost everything, you're Ren 2, and that's like a lot of just very reliable damage at range. Yeah. You can definitely roll the 1s or roll the 2s or whatever and have that be kind of underwhelming. But you have a pretty omnipresent threat.
Yeah.
And a cheap. That's like 130 points.
And pretty reliable.
Yeah.
For what it is.
Really reliable. And that's not even the best thing about it. I mean, one of the strongest abilities in the game is shutting off commands. You can do that pretty easily in this army because you shoot something with this bombard and it'll shut off the commands on a 3-up of anything which is sitting there. Anything which you've targeted, for one of these per turn on a 3-up. So you shoot it, doesn't do any damage, just, you're undertaking mortar fire, roll 3-up, no more commands for you. Won't stop the redeploy, will stop all of defenses and follow-up shooting or a key combat or something. So, good to keep in mind. And if you use that kind of rare demonic power resource on this one, you can then spread that, I'm not going to let you do any kind of commands to up to 3 more units nearby that target. So you could, in theory, have 2 to 4 no commands this turn after this unit's just sitting there, which is great. Depending on what you want to do.
And that's super helpful for going into a bunch of different units, bunch of different armies, like especially Stormcast, who is going to be outmaneuvering you. OBR, I could see some interesting play there.
Without a doubt. I mean, that's going to be the key into to really winning certain key combats or really killing certain things. I mean, one of my favorite tricks so far is if I really want something to go down and Ren's going to be an issue, I hit it with that first and I try to go to 3-up because that means that if I then bring the rockets to bear on it, I'm almost certain to not have to deal in all defense against those high damage characteristics. And maybe it's a good moment to talk about that other war machine. Again, 4-inch move, stumpy little dwarven legs, but this thing is a 24-inch range, has 3 shots, it's a little dicey, but it's 4s and 2s, and they're D3 +2 damage. Yeah. But if you're targeting a monster, one of these, or war machine, one of these, a turn can just say, no, that's flat 5 damage. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So right there, that's great.
Pretty scary. That's insanely scary.
It's scary in a couple ways, though, because I say with these things in experience, they're, again, 3 shots in the native profile. So if you don't juice them up, it's some real Yahtzee moments. Because even when all attack, those 3s. But if you don't all attack it, those were 4s. And, you can get them through and do tons of damage, or you can have those kind of, I did 5 damage to you or 0 damage to you moments. And though it's only 140 points, it's one of those things that sits back there and that's like its one job. That and zoning out whatever's nearby it. So I have found that it's pretty potent when it works, but you can only really get the most out of one of them because their 3 demonic power point, juiced up ability is if you've gotten some demonic power points on it, when you hit something with this, it does splash damage to things nearby. And you roll a dice equal to the number of those demonic power points for stuff within that target's combat range. Do mortals in a 3-up. So you can do a huge amount of splash damage if you're good. And you can combo that with one of the battle formations available to the Helsmiths, which all follow a common theme, which is, did you give 3 demonic power points to something? It gets a bonus, which is punishing, right? Because it means 1 unit sometimes gets a bonus when you commit those resources, and only specific types of units based upon the battle formation, which is not good. It's not like a universal, ability or enhancement like most of them get in the armies. The one I happen to like, which I guess I'm about to promote here, is the castigation battery, which is if you give a war machine 3 points, it gets +1 attack.
Which is really good in this instance.
Really good. one of the better ones, but like another one might be +1 to cast and unbind. So if I give one wizard, right, 3 of my 4 power points or all of my 3 power points, then maybe I get that benefit. But as you guys will see in this episode or here, there's always other places you might want to be dumping those points to get a good effect. So
Hmm.
it has to kind of align with your plan anyway. But I digress. If you put 3 power points on the big rocket and you are within 24 inches, you can unload potentially 20 damage of shots plus splash damage on something from
Pretty
threes and
good.
twos. And it's Ren too. So if you are looking at some big monster, you shut down its command points and you whammo it, you can just take down surprisingly big things. And that is great.
Hmm.
That's like I think the backbone in some ways of the army. The fact you can do that. No other shooting, like a lot of the sorcerers, like the guys in the bulls or the foot sorcerers, they can throw fireballs, like really, really shaky, unreliable fireballs at 18 inches. 6 on the Uruk-tar named character, 3 on the little sorcerer. We're
Hmm.
talking 4s and 4s, rend 1, D3 damage. Like can do a lot or nothing. Nice to have
Yeah.
it. You
It's
don't
like
build
a
your plan around it.
wizard weapon in combat. You have it, you expect it to do nothing when it does something. Good job.
Exactly, and that I think is key. But the important thing to remember is after we get to these artillery and these little fireballs, there's really only one more significant source of firepower in this army, and that's I think key to remember because they have great shooting, but it's very inflexible sometimes in this role because the last is this dual kit where you can either build these guys to have like blunderbusses, like the classic Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses,
Hmm.
or you can build them to have flamethrowers for some reason. Now, the flamethrowers are like 12-inch range on like 1 wound 5-man squads with a 4-up save. And they are like 3 shots, which are I think are 4s and 2s or 2s and 4s or something like that. Were like, maybe not much damage, like 1 damage or something. So not a lot of payoff for that. While the blunderbuss is probably the better choice.
Yeah, threes
Have a
and
very
twos.
yeah 3s and 2s, 3s and 2s that are shots, 1 shot each. 5 reinforced to 10s, 11 shots of the champion, 2 damage. And here's the sticky part. Here's where we get into like those demonic power points being such a thing.
Yeah.
They are rend 0 natively, but if you're juicing up their demon guns, they get a point of rend per demonic power point. So that is without a doubt great. But again, you're probably expending half of your demonic power resource to get one of these guys to like serious damage range,
Hmm.
3, where it's really going to stop the save. And even then, it's a bit hard in your throat. Because your best case scenario is dead eye, pick the target you really want, all at attack, have their rend up, and then it's essentially 11 shots at 2s, rend -3, 2 damage. So that's great. But again, 4-inch move in these guys, 18-inch range. So
Yeah.
you're telegraphing that. And they're also not that tough, right? If you can see them when they can see you and they can hit you, almost anything will ruin this unit's affected output because they're 4-up saves and a 1 wound body.
Yeah, that sounds like a rough way to kind of allocate it. It seems like there is an alternative like idea here that I wonder, and that's putting it on Ren 1 damage 2
Mm-hmm.
is actually really scary with what was it, 2s and 3s or 3s and 2s to hit
Yeah, 3s and 2s.
already.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And with the amount of shots that you can get out, and if you blob it up, I could see that late game being like, oh, do I want an extra Pipper end on here to kill that one monster that's somehow gotten away from me or something? I could see them being just a one demon point thing.
It's a good point, and I have even done that so far in the game where I didn't have point of resource and I gave him just 1 or maybe 2.
Yeah.
And I think that's also the devil of the army where there's some analysis paralysis and where do I put my points because you could dump all 3 in there, forgo other opportunities. But you really sometimes maybe just 1 or 2. It's like how the maths out,
Mm-hmm.
what do you really need or what's just overkill. But yeah, I mean, you think about that. They're good, but they're limited in that way. You have to be careful with them. And, that's not a super expensive unit because of the drawbacks, but still 220 points of your shooting, you have to really, really deliberate where you're putting them or where you want them to be to cover stuff.
Yeah.
So you got all that. And then at that point, you've pretty much done almost all the shooting in the army. The one thing that's left are one of the two Golem variations. You know, the little battle bots you can build has hand flamer cannons, which are cool,
Was
and
the Dominator engines?
the Dominator engines, and these are a very divisive unit, but one that I happen to like, and I think it's more of a diamond rough than people think, because it's the ultimate rock paper scissors unit in my mind, if you can get the matchups correct. But before we get into that, you know, the shooting on these, you have to be mindful of if you're thinking of the shooting output of this sort of shooting army, is this BattleBots little 8-inch flame cannons, where, you know, con only 8 inches, pro, you get like 5 shots natively before you do anything, and you can add two per target you choose, like you're splitting them up. So if you get in the middle of some stuff, you can just kind of flamethrow a lot of things and, you know, get to like 11 or 13 shots, which is pretty fun. And all of those, you know, they have, I think it was like a 2 or 4 up or something like that profile, or something along those lines. But if it gets through there,
stuff.
yeah, it's like red -1 D3 damage. You know, a good kind of flamethrower profile.
Can fire in combat, I think, right?
Yeah, and they got that for them too. Not the worst in combat. Like the fighty ones, you know, have some additional advantages. They can fight twice against heroes or whatever. But they're sort of uniformly meh in the wrong matchup, because the thing with these guys, again, with the demonic power points, is they start off sort of a little underpowered. And if you give them demonic power points, they get both additional point of movement, additional point of attack. So you think about your shooty guys, you know, they're started at 5 shots. They give you up to 8 shots. They're either moving 6 or they're moving 9. Now, obviously, if you power them up, moving 9 is a lot easier to get in range of a bunch of targets and do, like, you know, kind of your flamethrower thing, and to make that work. But, you know, they go in, they punch some things, have a D3 damage attack or two, you know, that's fine. The mace guys are the same. You know, they could do with a charge 4 damage hits, but they start at 4 attacks. So that goes up to 7 if you give them demonic power points, and obviously get more juice in their movement.
But they're
so
also damage 3.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and 4 on the charge, right?
That's exactly right. So
they're scary. They're scary.
I think they are scary, and I think people kind of dismiss them because of their points heaviness. But, you know, the key with these is, again, the rock paper scissors. I mean, the thing about them is they have a 2-up save and 10 wounds. So they're walking around. They're golems, right? They don't have a ward or anything, but they have a 2-up save, like the Caradhran ships.
Yep.
And if you don't have mortal wound capabilities on something that's fighting them, they can sit there and take it all day. I've had a Dominator engine with maces be the MVP in both of the games I played, very unexpectedly, because sometimes you need something to go kill heroes and do tons of damage and not die. One of them kept soloing a Gatebreaker because it was hard for a Gatebreaker to get to deal with that. You know, and a Gatebreaker deal with like everything else very easily. One of them, you know, kind of got in and killed some other heroes. You know, in the other game I had, you know, for vexing me, you know, in a DOK matchup, and that was like kind of what's needed, because if they can't get the mortals off, you're going to tank a lot. So there's a place for them, but yeah, you take all that shooting together, and you got to remember, you're already a very slow army, right? You're not KO, you're not teleporting, being all around. This shooting is some of it at probably 30 inches, 34 if you're willing to move it, a little of it at 24, maybe 28 if you want to push it, most of it at 18, really 22. That's also where all your spells and prayers, which have this damage potential, cap out. So you're kind of a mid-range army for most of your damage potential.
Yeah.
And you can't forget it.
You're probably like a more of a mid-board play army too. So like half the missions are set up where you really want to like overextend yourself on one side of the board to grab an objective, to swing early. So you're not going to be able to do that. Even if you go with, I think my favorite choice, which would be the Centaurs, the Bull Centaurs, right?
That's right.
The Anointed Sentinels, which obviously cavalry, they're going to be my favorite.
They're so fun. They're so fun, Matt, and also one of the more interesting things in the army, I think.
Yeah, when I look at this, I do see a couple of different like interesting combos, and like how you could lean into certain aspects of the army if you didn't want to play like a full, full round table style list. One of
Mhm.
those being just the little basic dudes. Um,
Infernal Cohort, yeah, they're pretty fun.
uh, like fully just beefing up the with the Hashutite Hashutite blades ones.
Hmm.
So you've got like a doing that same kind of stacking. Oh, I just need rend one. Okay, here we go. Cool. I'm dependable 3 to hit. Not going to waste any CP on that. Let's fully fill out that unit so that I have as much as I can, maybe 2 or 3 20-man units. That's pretty cheap at 200 points for a fully decked out unit, right?
Yeah,
Reinforced.
they're
And
a funny
then,
one, honestly, a really funny one.
yeah, but they're anti-infantry, right? So you can get like Ren 2 fairly easily around the board, right? And then having like I really like the idea of the Dominator engines kind of being these little like anchors in each one of these, like 3 Dominator engines. I like the Bane Maces. I would even forego shooting for the entirety of like that part of the army. And then 3 units of the little guys with swords, so they're anti-infantry.
Hmm.
And then you've got just, yeah, if you make it through those guys, this guy's going to countercharge you. Good
That's
job.
it's an interesting thing that's worth discussing. I think it actually also underpins some of the challenges the army has and also some of its opportunities, and that like they look great, on the table. It's been fun assembling and starting to paint some of them. But you
Mm-hmm.
think with just like the fighting infantry, you got like two types.
Mm-hmm.
There's expendable hobgrots, which might be one of the best units in the book,
Yeah.
And then you got these infernal cohorts, and the hobgrots are like cheap, 10 of them for 70 points, 10 models, and I think they're like 3 or 4 ups, 5 ups to wound, 2 attack seats. They're not going to do anything, but they have an ability to do a pregame move in the deployment phase. So you just like move 5 or 6 inches up. I think it's 5 inches, and you can actually kind of press out your zoning and your threat that way, your desecration, and that's like really good.
Mm-hmm.
They're not gonna kill a fly for you, but they're gonna be there. The Hashutite, kind of like legions, like the actual, Helsmiths, in armor and all their panoply, they're kind of funny because they have the armor save, which is good, the 3 up armor save, but they can't fight exceptionally well without buffs because your basic profile is you get 10 of them, 1 health, 1 control. Your 3 up save, yeah, but they're 1 damage with 2 base attacks, and it's kind of 2 flavors. There's the swords who hit on 3s and 4s, or the spears who hit on 3s and 4s, where the swords are anti-infantry +1 rend, and the spears are anti-cavalry and anti-charge.
Yep.
So like they can do slightly different things depending on what you're fighting, but they're starting from rend nothing. So before you do anything, they're going to be rend nothing or rend one if you have the right matchup.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually have a different set of special demonic power points. So if their table was the same one that the blunderbusses got, I think they'd actually be great because you could tailor their ability to punch through armor really well.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, they have something called demonic resilience, where if you give them nothing, it's what I described. Give them one, it's a 6 up ward save. Give them two, it's a 5 up ward save. And if you give them three, it's a bit of a win more, where you get a 4 up against spells and manifestations and prayers, but a 5 up otherwise. So they're not going to ever get killier natively without like some of your own spells and manifestations. They're going to have that.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can make him a bit fighter than that. Like the fighty hero, the despot can run in and he does one of those chain attacks where he
Yep.
attacks with his 5 and can maybe get some primordials and do like 2 damage hits or whatever. And then they all get to attack. If they're within his combat range, it just +1 attack. So these become 3 attacks. So your best version is 20 goes to 60, 61 attacks. And there's a prayer from the Ashen Elders of the prayer character you take, where you can buff up one of your nearby units to give them +1 rend.
There you
Or
go.
if you get the special version of it, Crit Mortal, which is at the 8 plus. So the best day ever for these is to be doing 61 attacks or Crit Mortal and rend 1 or 2 against the right
Well,
attacks.
and there's I do like that they're doing these that they have completely different roles. Like the spearman, anti-cav, they're your screen for your fighters behind them. right?
Mhm.
If you're going to play only Dwarfs and not bring in any Hobgrots, those
Mhm.
work perfectly as like, go ahead, I get +2 rend against you if you charge. Let's do
For
this.
cavalry, yeah, they're ready for it, and they have a
Mm-hmm.
3-up save, so they can survive. But especially if they're prepared, or if they have the 2, so they're 3-up, 5-up.
Mm-hmm.
So they're so well prepared. They're sort of surprising. The only thing they're not going to do is like hit back like a ton of bricks, right? I mean, they'll get some damage through, but if you have them buffed up, they're not going to be too nuts. And that's sort of where it's interesting because they're not chaos warriors, right? And they're not chosen. They're going to sit
Oh,
there. They're going to do this stuff, but they're not going to really wreak absolute havoc on it.
but
If you're lucky, some.
that's where there's some interesting combos that I really do enjoy in this. One of those being the Anointed Sentinels, where they have the strike first if they countercharge.
That's a really fun
Um,
ability.
yeah, like it really makes you it really makes me think of like how I play this kind of slow positioning game, and just my goal is to just own the center of the board. There's a couple of battle tactics that you can use to kind of like bleed out battle tactics points out of it, right? Hold the center and make sure nobody's in there, right?
hmm
um and that could be very interesting. It's still like I love playing the scouting force, right? To me, this army just like, even like the Hobgrots free move disqualifies them from scouting force if you're going to try and push forward early.
hmm
So to me, it's a very kind of scary army if you're going to play it as short guys on feet, right?
Oh, real tough because again, like we were talking about before, literally no teleports here, and
Mm-hmm.
it's worth kind of repeating that one over and over again because it becomes really interesting later. So that these guys have to hoof it, and so scouting force, yeah, you might be able to, even if you did do hopgrass, move them up, have a bunch of cheap legionnaires. You get the first one. You're not gonna get the second one because you're probably never gonna get all your main dudes in the backfield. And I guess you kind of wonder, based on that comment, what are the other main dudes? What do we have beyond these infantries in this roster? Well, you mentioned the centaurs, and they're kind of it, right? Because again, the war machines are cool, the
Mm-hmm.
bots, but they're not going to qualify for any of these other things, when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to like the tactics. So you're kind of left with the centaurs. And it's really funny because the lore really seems to fit with how they play on the battlefield. They're basically, deified, pampered mutants raised in the Hashut temples because they like the bulls, right? So every
Mm-hmm.
one of them is a bit of like a, oil bearded megalomaniac. Thinks they're the best things in sliced bread, and like they're pretty good, but you almost can see in your mind's eye every single one of them goes out and encounters like the real world. Like, whoa, what? You mean I can bleed? You mean the spirit can touch me?
What?
That's not supposed to happen. And you got the two flavors. There's the Sentinels you talked about, which are this awesome like defensive unit where
Mm-hmm.
if we're in a zone where you can kind of make them come to you and you're not as forced to hit the middle, yeah, come at me. They're here. They're going to guard all the stuff, and I'm going to countercharge you and strike first and clear off your harassing unit. Amazing, perfect for that. And
Mm-hmm.
then you have kind of like the shining go out and get them like mini Vanguard unit, which is the Bull
The
Centaurs.
Taurus.
Yeah,
Oh.
and these guys, they deserve their own category here because they're pretty good on their own, even if you don't juice them up with DP. But they're even better if you do
Mm-hmm.
because they start off with a 10-inch move. They're 4 wounds, they're, 4-up save, and they have a really good combat profile. They have 4 attack space with their brazen mauls, damage to flats with 3s and 3s and 1 rend, but they get +1 damage on the charge, so you're going to damage 3, and they get crit mortal. So
Mm-hmm.
the rend's a little bit light, but again, you could use the priest to buff that up to 2 if you really needed to. And they have crit mortals. So if you run in with the 6 of these, you're going to be doing a fair amount of damage on average if you get a few 6s in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they also have an ability, if you buff up with demonic power points where they get +1 to charge for each power point of the 3. So you get +3 to charge, which means they're pretty good at getting where you need to go.
And
And when they, oh yeah,
it's worth noting that the Sentinels have that as well, which is really, really good for countercharge.
That's right. So if you like do the thing where you're using or a tar to move points around, you can like have them shooting something cool, then take those points off and put them on the set list if you think you can get deep struck, and they're ready to like really reliably get their counter charge if they're positioned well, which is super fun.
Mm-hmm.
But but yeah, but of course those guys are very much a tech piece, and these guys just like the one go kill them thing you have.
Go
And can they
Killums.
kill them? Oh, absolutely. Now, problem is that you go in, you hit it all, you hopefully kill it, even through like maybe the bad rend. Maybe even you do some bonus mortals in the charge because you get to do 3 ups to do mortals for up to the 6 you have in the unit when you hit with something. So you'll probably kill something. The issue you run into is that these guys are the definition of like getting out in front of your lines because if they go anywhere, you're probably not keeping up with them with the rest of the army for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're a little bit exposed. And they, again, for a 4 health and a 4 up save, no war, they will die to anything. So unless you have the perfect target to punch up into, two of these are, so unit 6 is close to 400 points. So there's a lot of things you need them to go kill based upon their role in the army. And then you might end up losing the trade in the long run if they get clapped back. Now, that being said, there's a few tricks we'll get into later that can stop that, but it just is the fundamental weakness where, as I was kind of talking about at the beginning of this episode, you have all this great mixed arms, but you don't have the depth of bench and overlapping synergies where you can kind of get around the weaknesses of being overexposed one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they run out, they do the job, but there's 400 points that maybe you killed 200, and then the rest of it's going to get lifted. Um, the only other thing, kind of we should mention in terms of the roster here, we're not going to talk about the foot heroes too much because there's a wizard, there's the priest. Yes, there's some abilities to mitigate damage or heal war machines, but you have the guys riding the big golems, the bull tauruses.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of funny because there's a special character, with a good damage spell and manipulation point or a tar. There's like a generic demon smith riding like their boltar, but they very much are wizards on big golems because they hit on force. So the wizards are kind of take it or leave it. And the bulls can do crazy amounts of damage they hit, but again, on hitting on force, they can be a bit swingy, and you can sort of trick yourself into thinking they're going to do more than they will.
Mm-hmm.
To that point, they give these everyone the profiles, so they're thinking about this correctly. Now, one of these bulls will have 6 attacks, 4s and 2s, red 2, 4 damage, and a charge. That's amazing. It's still force. A -1 to hit, a bad die roll. They're going to do less than you think they will, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they're companions, so that comes with its own kind of limitations. Now they can keep up, their 10-inch movement with the bull centaurs and do kind of stuff like that, but it still means that at best you're going to get well ahead of your lines with a flying character and some bull centaurs. So unless you go all in the bull centaurs, it generally is going to mean that you're kind of out in front of it.
Yep.
So I think to kind of draw some of the packages together, you can see how there are all these good elements individually, but you're not that great at pressing out and holding all the things you want if it's far away from you. And the things you have that can do that can be overexposed pretty early. And the fact that you need to do those things to try to get the points means that it can feel a little bit dicey. Now, all of this would be much better even if it wasn't for obscurity.
Yeah, true. Um, so that being said, I've pulled up your list that you've been playing in the slow roll.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to like speak to it, let's see how we can beat those limitations
Yeah,
by building a cohesive army. How about that?
let's talk about that. So I'll pull up the list too, so that I'm talking to it, and maybe when you edit this, you can put up on the screen so people can see that, and look at it. But in essence, this is like a good. Let's get out there with it, kind of mixed arms. Try to have all the different things in play. Version of the army, but it is designed to try to minimize the weaknesses and make the most of what we got. So first, I got Urktar, the Demon Smith, the guy in the big bull. He's there because he can move the points around. That can be really important sometimes. He also is a pretty good wizard. He can dump out, a couple casts. He can give himself a 5 of war save and either +1 or +2 to cast. So he is good at that job. And it's nice to have that in the army. Again, can be fighty with that big bull. Not the craziest, because again, the fours and twos. I have the unit of reinforced bull centaurs, so 6 of them, the pampered bulls out there to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
2 units of hobgrot vandals. These just 10-man screener zoner squads. You have to get out there and grab stuff, do some desecration. Then I have a couple regiments. First regiment is an Ashen Elder. That's the priest character you got. Along with 2 10-man units of the Infernal Cohort with spears. I take those guys because they can sit on objectives and generate the points, which is kind of their secondary job of holding stuff and zoning, because that'll help me get more for the other elements of the army, or even early in the game, or get that critical number 3 later.
Mm-hmm.
Then I have a unit of 10 blunderbuss Infernal Razors. These are the guys with the 1 shot, but it can be up to Ren 3 and 2 damage. Then I have another regiment with a Demon Smith, which is like the foot wizard. So give me a 3 cast across the army. I take him.
Pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I know some people don't love him. I like him for one specific reason. He can heal war machines. His DPP ability is to heal D3 plus number of demonic power points you've invested on a war machine. And for each demonic power point, the range of his ability goes up by 6 inches. So if he's standing next to something, just heal D3. If I give 3 demonic power points, it's I think an 24-inch range to say 3 plus D3 heal, which means I can hit all the golems. I can hit, or Tark, who's riding like a golem and is a war machine. I can hit the war machines themselves, and that keeps things in play. And of course, the rest of his unit are war machines. It's one of those jet streaker rocket batteries, one of the bombards, and one of the dominator engines with the maces. Now, to round it all out, and this goes into how you make up for some of the weaknesses, we were talking about before, Matt. Mm-hmm. I took the manifestation lore of forbidden power, which in my mind is a do not leave home without it. Yep. Do not leave home without it. One for this particular army. Yeah, it's all because of a couple of things, but the 2 most important ones are bridge and shards. Mm-hmm. The bridge is absolutely critical because it lets you multiply your threat range, especially with +1 or +2 cast wizard, to more often than not get those slow blunderbuss razors into exactly the perfect position to delete something really important. Mm-hmm. Because you can just teleport them and do it. Or if you want to get real spicy, you can use it to take the bull centaurs, and get 6-inch charges on something really important in the backfield.
Just yeet them.
You can yeet them, right? Because maybe you just give them 3 DPP. You drop them so they're just outside 9 inches. They have +3 inches on charge. Make sure they're 2 targets, and you have a rerollable 6. You'll probably get it. It'll do a lot of damage to something. So there's value there. The other thing is the shards. If you need to screen, throw in the back, stop stuff from popping up and deal with war machines. They're additional zoner. And even that Laoshan the Soul Seeker, right? If you want to get some backfield objective and you're just trying to get stuff around the board, the little wizard can hop in the boat and move faster than like anything else in the army. Mm-hmm. All that's pretty invaluable, so you kind of want to have it. The other thing is the Ashen Elder. He has a acute ability to stop the first pip of damage thing nearby him do, but he's carrying some artifacts and ability. His ability is a fun one. It's called Fiery Worms, where if he's close to the blunderbusses, they get to do a shot against something which is charged in the charge phase, enemy charge phase against something within the range. And they only hit on 6s, but it's like fishing for 6 to do extra damage or Ren 2, or sorry, damage 2.
Yeah, do it.
Sometimes makes a difference. Yeah.
All day.
The other is probably one of those artifacts you're going to see like a lot with this army, probably to the exclusion of the other choices, because it's such a tech piece. It's this weird thing called the Scroll of Petrification, where you just drop it on your own unit within 12 inches in any hero phase, and it turns them to stone until your next hero phase, which means they can't use abilities. Mm-hmm. Enemies can't move through them, but they can ignore their combat range for the purpose of moving around stuff. And then they have a 2-up ward save. So as long as someone doesn't have like a tech against wards, you can basically get something out of position, or do you need to have as a big blocker and then turn them to stone temporarily, and then they really aren't going to be able to kill them. They probably won't try, so that thing will still be there when your next turn comes up. Really good to like plug a big gap between things like the Notwires, the Hobgrots or the cohort, and say, okay, you can't come through here by Silver Fire Base. Also really good in some circumstances to have your big day with the bull centaurs. If you have the right character nearby,
Hmm.
turn them to stone so they'll still be there the next turn, probably. All great
Um,
stuff.
there's even, I could imagine some really cool stuff because this is any hero phase, right?
Yeah.
So let's say eh, maybe it's possible, right? It's within 12. So like there's a couple of combos you get by moving forward, holding an objective, and completely screening somebody off if you're doing like a full like blob, right?
Mhm.
And just saying, nope, this objective that you needed to take from me to win the game ain't gonna happen,
That's so fun that way.
right?
Exactly. It's like here's
Push
an
some,
immovable wall.
and it'd be really good for like a lot of just battle tactic denials at the right times. So if somebody needs to take something from you and you've got, I don't know, a full unit of your uh, Hashutite spears on it,
Hmm.
they're just sitting there. That's great. I love it. That's
Yeah.
also hilarious because they're all afraid of turning into stone, aren't they?
Oh, they absolutely are. And it's like you just like the priest temporarily gives them a dose of that medicine and it actually
Mm-hmm.
helps you, but it definitely is like a double-edged effect. But yeah, this particular list, it tries to play around with these things. I mean, its whole job is to try to get the points such as it can, but still have the ability to do enough movement to ensure that you can apply the pressure with these valuable units to get things over the line. Um, get the artillery do its thing. I try to take like I took the war machine, battle formation, so I can do like the 4 shots on one if I need to. But
Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting one to play so far because it's so awkwardly balanced on a knife's edge at all times. I don't have 20 Chaos Warriors. I got Hashtag
Mm-hmm.
Spear guys who can still die. Uh, I have screeners, but they can go. I have really fighty cavalry, but they can melt. I have really good shooting, but anything can hide in the woods. And it's a complete game changer what I have to answer that. I mean, I ran
Mm-hmm.
into one situation I was playing against Alan, in our recent game, and it was so funny because he had all these scary snake ladies, right? And we had the center objective obscured, and he just wasn't able to get with attack, all of the snake ladies on there. But I was in a situation where if I killed 2 snake ladies, the rest would be obscured, and thus essentially invincible, except for like the dominator into the maces or the bulls to go fight them. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just a tough situation because all of my answers are generally shooting based. So I have had to really think carefully about that piece and how to work around that.
How did you come up with the battle tactics cards for that?
uh, Painfully. I think it was admittedly, I'm not sure I have the best ones. It's sort of like a selection of like the least worst choices, because I wanted to pick things I could score some of reliably, even because nothing seemed like it'd be a lock.
Mm-hmm.
Intercept and recover, always a fan of it because I think with good shooting and range, I'm going to suffer if they hide little guys in the back and never engage with them. It'll be very hard for me to stop that.
Yeah.
But if they put them on anything which has to move around or fight, especially if it's a monster or a flyer or something which is going to be in the middle, I can delete that. I can use part of my, like a glorious charge from the bull centaurs or some of the shooting to get that done and scoop up some of those points, which I have, in the games I've played. It's been one of Mega's a bit easier, and because of course they can hide from the shooting, and the other one, against the Snake Ladies, there some of those units eventually fell to the fact that they were fighting, and I could get to them with one
Mm-hmm.
of these things and the shooting flexibility. The other choice, Restless Energy, I like because you can start with the water with blood, and all you have to do is take an objective that your opponent controlled,
Yep.
which is achievable.
Yeah.
Now, and yeah,
Yeah. It sounds achievable. I mean, just when you do it, you gotta ensure that all your plans have come to fruition, right?
oh, absolutely. I think where it kind of loses some gas is oftentimes I'll find when things are going well, I'll have maybe 3, maybe 4 of these tactics, but if it's like the best day ever is get all 3 of intercept and probably water with blood, which is the first of restless. But the second invasive species, I have to invasive species have to get the objective in enemy territory. So unless people haven't taken, the bull centaurs, or unless I haven't, I haven't, had some bad luck in keeping Urktar alive, and somehow scooting across the board to do things like that. Even that's a bit of a tall order. That's a win more condition because of the lack of teleports generally, unless they do something really cheeky.
Interesting. So like I do wonder, like, would the bridge and like a forced movement from like spears over that be helpful?
I think it could if you could bring more with you. If it was like a KO boat bridge, yeah. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the problem is the full package you want to really see the spears work, I think, is you want to have 20 of them and you want their despot there. Oh, hold on a second. Yeah, so it's really an interesting situation, like when you're trying to tool around and fight with these guys, because you can get those 20 spears across, but
Mm-hmm.
where's their support? So kind of you can never get that extra attack because you can't have a second bridge or can't bring anyone with you, which is kind of a bummer because there is a world where people underestimate the spears and they're kind of sitting there as like kind of stodgy blocks. They pop off and do a bunch of damage, but they're never going to be like chosen. Yeah.
Well, the hilarious thing is like that world will only exist once for your opponent, right? And they'll underestimate them once, but then they won't want to be dealing with them after that, especially if there's cavalry. So part of me almost wonders, because you got these spears, you can juice them up, right? Why not throw them onto an objective early and just like slowly move towards supporting that area, or leave them out there and take like a left flank move as fast as you can
Hmm.
with everything else, like foregoing, you know, maybe not the shooting, but foregoing any charges or anything like that. And the great thing about, I think, the spears specifically is you can force a run on them, right? And they're still
Hmm.
just as good. In fact, they're probably better because you're not going to make the charge. You're going to force somebody to say, "Oh, do I want to charge them or not?" To where you'll get the extra rend, right?
I think
So
so. Yeah, yeah.
so like it seems like the more you've spoken to it, the more it feels like it is one of those like enforce your will type of armies, plays middle of the table mainly with a couple of like offshoots here and there. But like as soon as you're up in the middle of the table, the momentum is now yours to kind of start picking apart things, right?
I think that's exactly it, Matt. I mean, it's almost like if you think about the game in the abstract, you want to be in a position where you're owning and contesting the primaries in such a way that you're going to win the primary unless they come to you. And you want to
Mm-hmm.
be in a position to counter punch or destroy with shooting the things that come to do that, so you can retain it or take it back. And then if you do that and scoop up a couple points in the way, I think you win. But if
Yeah.
you hang back, like look at my castle, I'm in the corner at four inch movement, people can be like, awesome, I'm just gonna win this game now.
And it's interesting because while we were while we were talking about this, I was building a list of my own, and of course, like focusing in on the two strengths that I figured, why not? Let's see it, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I saw your balanced list, and I really love how it really does. It plays into your strengths of being able to like use uh, certain movement abilities, use certain spells, right? And then the style of play that you like, which it does have some very like up in a clutch moment, the Dominator engine is going to come out and screw something up. I'm
Hmm.
gonna go ahead and put the bombard and rocket battery just oppressively ensuring that nobody is like messing with my guys as they move upfield. That style of play, right?
Hmm.
So I said, well, what if I was going to do scouting force, right? And so I built a list for for pure stupidity.
Oh
The
man.
so the main thing that I wanted to build it on was knowing that each of these battle formations uh, can affect the game in different ways.
Mhm.
And so I went ahead and took the Bulls of Ziggurat, which I imagine not many people are going to take
Oh,
because
I think you're right.
I have to be a special flower, right? Um, but it adds 2 inches to the move characteristic of a bull centaur unit, essentially, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And monster. And I was like, okay, I like that idea. Didn't put any artifacts on because I hadn't gotten that far, but I really like the ones that you picked there. Um, I'll have to look at fiery worms, but here's the list. And tell me if you think this would work as a Helsmiths of Hashut army that is playing on, a razor's edge.
I'm
You
ready for
ready?
it. I'm
You
ready
ready?
for it.
Okay, so got a demon smith or a Damon Smith. Don't know how we
Mhm.
pronounce that still after over 30 years of Warhammer in my life. Still pronounce Demon Smith and Damon Smith.
It feels like it could be both.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
feel like I read it as Damon Smith, but I hear and say Demon Smith just as much. So within his regiment, he's got a Death Shrieker rocket battery and 2 bombards.
Mhm.
So right there, what I want to do is just punish anybody who thinks they're going to make it there without teleporting, right? Like you got a unit, I'm gonna let you come up to me and I'm just gonna delete that unit from the board. Good luck, have fun, get there. Then the next regiment, this is only a 2 drop, is an Ashen Elder to make sure
Mhm.
that, I can ensure that for at least one turn, if I do get alpha struck, um, there's just going to be an extra place of power or extra ritual point, right?
Mhm.
So I can ensure that I can get something out a little bit quicker. And then, because I'm a madman, and frankly, I think they're probably my favorite models of the release, 3 units of reinforced sentinels and 1 unit of reinforced bull centaurs.
Oh wow, so that's literally 24 of them.
Yeah. And so the reason I'm going with sentinels is kind of twofold. One, they're 320 points, and that's a steal for that many 4 wound models at a 4 and up save, as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm.
Um, and there is also, I think, a synergy in running multiples of them, in that if they're staying in a group and they're just spread out enough where somebody cannot tap in a 3 inch, 3 inch, 3 inch, right?
Mhm.
To get into combat with 2 units at once, there's an immediate counter charge that comes from one of them. So there's always
I
2 CP saved for them. But they then are acting as a screen for the bull centaurs, who will come up just a little bit behind and on the following turn deliver the finishing blow.
I like that a lot actually. And now that think about that, because you're going scouting force and because you kind of want the sentinels to be weirdly in the midboard, spread out, like close but not that close, like close with the DPP to have a good reasonable counter charge, but like choose your
Mm-hmm.
poison, have the other ones come in and hit you hard with like the 3 damage, always strikes first. Yeah, that could work because they're going to score you those tactics and be kind of weirdly oppressive, especially if you can tag them into obscuring terrain of some sort so they're less vulnerable to shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And you still have a long range threat to provide some pressure from the back. And you
Yep.
still got the the big unit of the bull centaurs to do some like real, charge the Valkyrie stuff. So I think that's pretty fun. The
Yep.
I was
One of
thinking we
the
got to go a different direction with it actually when it first started.
I mean, I could have just gone all bull centaur. We know how I like to roll, but like the
Mhm.
the thing that really speaks to me with this is that it plays wrathful cycles and scouting force really well because of the low actual model count that's in those bull centaurs compared to like the points commitment, I would say.
Mhm.
The rest of the points commitment is going to be backboard. They're not going to be taking objectives early on. And the idea of it would not be to spread out, right? That's the last thing you'd want to do. You want to get everybody out of your combat zone your first turn, and that gives you your first scouting force, right? Because it's just cavalry. So you've got four potentially, yeah, you've got four units just outside of your deployment zone, and hopefully you can hold one more objective than your opponent. But using all of those guys, even if they're only OC1, you're still going to be able to take a an objective from your opponent by just weight of force, right? So like that gets you two fairly easy battle tactics early on to get you into the harder area, which for me, I think Daring Resurgence is probably my favorite
Oh yeah.
because you're forcing your opponent's hand by just having that much critical mass in one area of the board. They're either going to go and try and outscore you by taking other objectives, which you're then going to punish them with the Death Shrieker and the Bombard, right? For doing that. They may get a battle tactic, but on your next turn, you're going to be just absolutely pummeling them. So like,
I think you're onto something there, and I could see that just playing out in such a fun way. I actually like this version you've come up with a bit better than like the more standard, where
I
people will try to go all bull centaurs and they'll
mhm.
get a couple of the Tauruses because they have the ability to let them retreat and charge, the 12 inches of them. But that's less multidimensional in this threat, and I like the plan you have with yours. That's just like all oops gas.
Yeah, that's all in on one aspect and then overwhelming suppression on the other, right?
Exactly, exactly.
So I do think there's like, now that we've kind of talked through it, I do think there are different ways to build it. And I know that there are other people in our area that have decided to like lean all in on just massed infantry, which is another really intriguing thing. But I have no time to paint that much infantry. I'm not even gonna
Same
lie.
here.
Like at least to the quality that I want to.
Yeah, like there's a lot of play with all those things, but I think that I've been teasing that there is maybe one alternate play style a little bit, right? Because like you're talking about one other teleport that might be out there.
Mhm.
And we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about that because there is one Army of Renown, just kind of funky, changes the name of the game. And it has a bunch of different characteristics, like an escalation table that you might get out of Daughters of Cain, where things get better, every round you persist. But it's the Forge Host of Uruk Tar, and you can't take any Hobgrots or any of the cavalry. But
Mhm.
what you get instead is all your war machines and everything get crit 2 hits in the second battle round and kind of escalates to the point they get crit on 5 ups, starting in the starting in battle round 4 or 5, I think. And in the meanwhile, you get a 6 of saving war machines, but most critically, all those Hashutite infantry that we're talking about, the guys with the blunderbusses or the little flamethrowers, which aren't that good, or the spears, the sword guys.
Mhm.
You can spend a CP in your hero phase and bring them back if they've been destroyed within 6 inches of any board edge. So there's your deep strike. It's a very different play style. You don't have any DPP except for maybe the oversight ones you can generate off the spears if you're lucky.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some play there. It's a very different way to do it, but then you can go play backfield maybe.
That'd be interesting. That and what units are available in that? Is it all of the regular dudes, or can
It's
you get the centaurs in it? Because there's some
pretty
interesting play
sure
in there.
no centaurs. I'm pretty sure no centaurs and
Yep.
no vandals, so no the hobgrots. But you could take like the big bots, right? The golems. You could take the
Mhm.
war machines. You could take Uruk Tar. You have to take him actually. Don't think you can take a second one. But you do get like all the normal characters. You have the blunderbusses and the flamethrower guys, and you have the critically the infernal cohorts. So you can load up on 20 blocks of infernal cohort for 200, 320 points. So they're 3 up saves, march them around exactly like the Legion you talked about.
Mhm.
They're crit 2 hits most of the game natively. And you can do all the same buff stuff that you talked about. And yeah, they're kind of meant to die, or them, or the blunderbusses, even the little 5 packs, and just bring them back in weird corners of the board to do like scouting force or to shoot stuff, from range.
Yeah, that's pretty
There's
good.
yeah, it potentially could be a lot of fun. I think there's a couple spammy lists in that, which would be neat, or even just like some things you can do with just bots because the crit 2 hits, makes them better, more reliable, plus have that 6 up ward save. And even the artillery is kind of a little more impressive when you have that,
Hmm.
that extra kind of like balancing for the bad one, where that 6 will
Yeah.
get you the hit back. Yeah.
Yeah. I just realized there was the ziggurat stampede that fulfills my need for cavalry. Oh,
Yeah.
hello.
Oh, a special guest here.
Cool. Well, uh, I think I think that's a pretty comprehensive breakdown of ideas that we can use for Hashut. Hopefully, we'll start seeing them on the table more.
Here's hoping I'll be on my assembly line, get some of those guys ready for, at least some non-paint requirement things. Hopefully we'll have a chance, and then ultimately some GTEs and things with them on the board. But I think there's a lot of play there. I mean, the changes of the season will affect them a lot. Maybe
Hmm.
some regiments of renown would be huge for them. But there's still a lot of play there. It's not a forgiving army, but it's one with a lot of depth once you start getting into it.
Yeah, and I'm I'm now kind of interested. I'm now actually kind of interested that we've done this kind of breakdown. So we'll see. Maybe I start throwing some models together as well.
Yeah, so you join us.
Uh,
Join us. The Hashut is the father of darkness, and there's room in the ziggurats for more, Matt. And our dear loyal listeners, if you guys have any comments or thoughts, definitely drop in the video or drop them on the podcast. Join
mhm,
us in the
mhm.
Discord and let's talk about it. I mean, we're gonna figure this one out together. Hope we can crack the code. Bring these dwarves the domination they deserve.
Indeed, and have rightfully earned through blood and like cruel stuff. Lots
Yeah,
of
cruel
cruel stuff.
stuff, demon energy, industry. Don't worry about it. It's probably
Yeah.
okay. Yeah,
Well, I guess on that note, I think we've come to a good place, huh?
I think so. Another
Yeah,
question is, who will have the last word?
that is a
What will
good
last word be?
question.
That'll be domination.
Hello, everybody. It is Rocco, your boy, coming at you once again with another Always Strikes Last promo. That's right. Ring that bell. Leave a like, a subscribe. On whatever platform you're listening to us on, be it YouTube, be it Podbean, whatever you got these days, so you can keep up to date. Don't forget, we have a Patreon if you want, give us a thank you for all the stuff we put out. That gets you into our member-exclusive Discord. And if you want to be an even bigger supporter, we've got a merch store.